Don't call him Dad tomorrow, Emily whispered, so softly Daniel Pierce almost missed it beneath the rain tapping against the kitchen windows. He stood in the hallway of the house he used to own, one hand still on the cold brass doorknob, his dark overcoat beaded with water, the glow from his phone lighting up his wedding reminder for the next afternoon. He had arrived at 9:47 p.m., nearly 2 hours later than he promised, carrying 2 glossy department store bags and the faint confidence of a man who believed expensive gifts could soften any silence. The house was dim except for the small lamp Claire always left burning near the stairs. It was the same lamp Daniel used to tease her about, calling it unnecessary, saying the kids were old enough not to be afraid of the dark. But now, in that soft amber light, he heard his daughter's voice come from the landing above, thin and careful, like a ribbon pulled too tight. He doesn't like when we need things, she said. There was a rustle, then Noah's smaller voice, sleepy and uncertain. But Mom said we have to be nice at the wedding. Daniel froze. For a second, he told himself he had misunderstood. Children said strange things when they were tired. Children repeated fragments from school, cartoons, dreams. He stepped deeper into the kitchen, slow enough that the floorboards did not complain, and set the shopping bags on a chair. One held a white dress for Emily, folded in tissue paper. The other held a navy vest for Noah, the size printed neatly on a sticker Daniel had guessed because he had not known what size his son wore anymore. On the table, beside a half-finished math worksheet and a glass of milk gone warm, lay an envelope. It was not sealed. The handwriting on the front leaned unevenly across the paper in blue marker. Dear stranger. Daniel stared at those 2 words as if the room had tilted. Behind him, the refrigerator hummed. Somewhere upstairs, Claire's voice murmured gently, telling the children it was late, telling them tomorrow would be handled, telling them they did not have to pretend anything they did not feel. That last sentence landed harder than it should have. Daniel picked up the envelope. He knew he should not open it. He knew it in the quick tightening of his jaw, in the way his thumb paused under the flap, in the sudden memory of Emily at 5 years old running across this same kitchen with paint on her hands, yelling Daddy before he had even put his briefcase down. But curiosity was easier than guilt. Anger was easier than fear. He slid out the folded notebook paper. The first line had been written in Emily's careful school handwriting, with smaller words squeezed beneath it where Noah had added his own. Dear stranger, Mom says we should be polite, so we won't call you what we feel. Daniel's breath stopped. The rain outside seemed to fall farther away. He read the line again, slower this time, as if a different meaning might appear if he gave the words enough time. Stranger. Not Daddy. Not Dad. Not even Daniel. Just stranger. His phone buzzed against the table, bright and impatient. Vanessa's name filling the screen with a message about tomorrow's rehearsal dinner. The photographer. The perfect family photo. Daniel did not touch it. From the hallway, a floorboard whispered. Claire Whitmore stood beneath the archway in a faded gray sweater and jeans, her hair loosely tied back, her face bare of makeup, her expression calm in a way that made him feel suddenly overdressed, overprepared, and too late. She looked at the letter in his hands, then at the shopping bags on the chair. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Daniel expected her to rush forward, to snatch the paper away, to accuse him of crossing a line. She did none of that. She only rested one hand lightly on the back of a chair, as if steadying the room instead of herself. That wasn't for you, she said. Her voice was low, not sharp, not wounded, just tired in a way that did not ask to be noticed. Daniel swallowed, but pride moved faster than remorse. So this is what you let them write about me? Claire's eyes did not flinch. Outside, headlights passed across the window, briefly washing the kitchen in silver, and in that flash Daniel saw everything he had not paid attention to. The children's sneakers lined neatly by the back door, Noah's raincoat hanging from a hook he could barely reach. Emily's spelling test pinned to the fridge with a tiny gold star, and a family calendar filled almost entirely in Claire's handwriting. Dentist. Library night. Soccer practice. Parent conference. Dad pickup, crossed out once, then again, until the ink had pressed grooves into the paper. Claire followed his gaze, but said nothing. That was what unsettled him most. She did not defend herself. She did not defend the children. She did not explain the empty spaces he had left behind. Daniel looked back down at the letter, his fingers tightening along the crease. Upstairs, Emily whispered something Daniel could not hear, and Noah answered with a small sound that might have been fear or sleep. For the first time that night, Daniel understood that the children were not asleep. They were listening. They had been listening for years. Claire did not move toward him. She did not lower her voice for the children upstairs, and she did not raise it for the man standing in her kitchen with a letter that had never belonged to him. She simply watched Daniel hold the folded paper as if it had burned him without leaving a mark. For years, she had imagined this moment differently. In the early months after the divorce, she thought she would scream if he ever finally noticed what his absence had done. She thought she would list every missed school play, every canceled Saturday, every birthday candle blown out beside an empty chair. But by the time the moment came, anger had already turned into something quieter, something colder, something that no longer needed his permission to exist. Daniel looked toward the stairs, then back at her. "They should not be writing things like this," he said. Claire's hand tightened once around the back of the chair, then relaxed. "They write what they cannot say to you." The words landed softly, but Daniel heard the weight underneath them. He glanced again at the letter, then at the calendar on the refrigerator, where his name had been crossed out so many times it looked less like a schedule and more like a record. Dad pickup, Dad dinner, Dad call, each one rewritten in Claire's neat black ink, then replaced with Mom. He remembered some of those nights only in pieces. A late meeting downtown, a client dinner that ran long, Vanessa needing help choosing invitations, traffic on the interstate, his own voice on speakerphone saying, "Tell them I am sorry, I will make it up next weekend." At the time, the words had felt reasonable, adult, temporary. Now they sat around him like unpaid debts. Claire stepped into the kitchen and picked up Noah's glass of milk, carrying it to the sink. She moved with the practiced quiet of someone who had learned not to wake children who already slept lightly. The faucet ran for 3 seconds. Daniel watched her rinse the glass, and suddenly he saw the years hidden inside that small motion. Claire in this kitchen at midnight, washing 2 cereal bowls after helping with homework alone. Claire tying Noah's sneakers before dawn because Daniel had forgotten it was field trip day. Claire sitting in the school auditorium with an extra coat draped over the chair beside her, saving a seat for a man who would text 20 minutes after the curtain rose. He had not seen those things because he had not been there to see them. "You could have called me," he said, but it sounded weak even before he finished. Claire dried the glass and set it upside down on a towel. "I did." She turned to him then, her face calm, almost gentle, and that gentleness made it worse. "In the beginning, I called. I reminded you. I sent pictures. I sent times and addresses and directions. I packed their bags and told them not to worry because Daddy was busy but Daddy loved them. I gave you every soft version of the truth I could find." Daniel looked away first. Above them, the stairs gave a faint creak. Emily and Noah were still listening. Claire heard it too, and her eyes lifted briefly toward the ceiling. When she spoke again, her voice became even quieter. "Then one day, Emily stopped asking me what time you were coming. Noah stopped sleeping with his backpack by the door, and I realized I was not protecting them from disappointment anymore. I was teaching them to wait for it." The sentence settled into the kitchen like dust after a door closes. Daniel wanted to argue. He wanted to say he paid support on time, that he sent gifts, that he had never meant to hurt them. He wanted to point to the shopping bags on the chair, the dress, the vest, the evidence that he had come tonight. But the gifts looked small under the lamp. Not cheap, not careless, just late. Claire walked to the table and gently slid the letter from his hands. She did not snatch it. She did not make him feel forgiven. She folded it along the same creases Emily's fingers had made and placed it beside the worksheet. "This letter was written 6 months ago," she said. Daniel's eyes lifted. For a moment, the room seemed to lose sound. 6 months ago, he had still believed the children were adjusting. 6 months ago, he had told Vanessa that Claire was making things tense. 6 months ago, Noah had stopped running to the window when a car slowed near the house. Claire looked at the envelope, then at Daniel. "I did not send it to you. I did not show it to your mother. I did not use it in court. I kept it because they asked me to keep it. They were not trying to punish you, Daniel. They were trying to put their sadness somewhere it would stop hurting them." Upstairs, a door clicked softly shut. Not slammed, just closed. Daniel stood in the amber kitchen light, surrounded by the ordinary evidence of a family that had continued without him, and for the first time, he understood that the letter had not made him a stranger. It had only named what the children had been learning to live with. The silence after the door clicked shut did not feel empty. It felt occupied by every small moment Daniel had missed, and every excuse he had once believed sounded reasonable. Claire reached for the letter again, not to hide it, but to place it back exactly where Emily had left it, beside the math worksheet with the smudged pencil marks and the eraser crumbs. There was something careful in the way she handled it, as if a child's pain deserved the same respect as a legal document, maybe more. Daniel watched her and remembered a different version of this kitchen, years earlier, when Emily was little enough to stand on a step stool and Noah was still in a high chair kicking his socks onto the floor. He had come home late then too, but late had once meant 8:15, not weeks without showing up. Claire would look tired, but she would still smile when he kissed the top of Emily's head, still slide a reheated plate toward him, still say the children waited up because they wanted to tell him something important. Back then, he thought family was a place that would keep the lights on no matter how long he stayed away. He had mistaken welcome for permanence. The house had changed quietly after the divorce. The wedding photo that once hung near the hallway had disappeared, leaving behind a faint rectangle on the paint for almost a year. His favorite coffee mug was gone from the cabinet. The leather chair he used to claim on Sunday mornings had been replaced by a small bookshelf filled with library paperbacks, school art projects, and a jar labeled rainy day coins. Nothing dramatic had been removed. Nothing had been thrown at him. His life had simply been edited out by necessity, inch by inch, until only the children's last names still tied him to the rooms. Claire walked past him to the refrigerator and took down the calendar. She did not hand it to him like evidence. She laid it flat on the table between them. Daniel saw the months at once, marked in ordinary ink, ordinary boxes, ordinary handwriting. A dentist appointment circled in red. Emily's choir night. Noah's second grade open house. Parent-teacher conference. Fall festival. Flu shots. A small note beside one Saturday said, "Dad promised park," with a tiny smiley face that had been crossed out so gently it was almost worse than if Claire had scratched through it. He touched that square with one finger. "I had a work emergency," he said, but the sentence sounded old, like something found in the back of a drawer. Claire looked at the square, not at him. "You had many of them." Daniel's jaw tightened, then loosened. He wanted her to sound bitter. Bitterness would have given him something to push against. But Claire's voice held no performance, no courtroom fire, no hunger to win. She sounded like someone reading the weather after the storm had already passed. "Emily wore her yellow rain boots that day." Claire said, "It did not rain. She wore them because you bought them for her and told her you would take her puddle jumping when you came back." Daniel closed his eyes for a second, and a picture came to him with cruel brightness. A little girl by the front window, yellow boots on the wrong feet, palms pressed to the glass. "She waited until dinner," Claire continued. "Then she put the boots in the closet and asked if you had another family somewhere." The refrigerator hummed again. The lamp near the stairs flickered once, then held. Daniel opened his eyes and looked toward the dark landing. He could not see the children, but he felt the distance from the kitchen table to their closed bedroom doors as if it had stretched into miles. "Noah stopped drawing you in pictures after that winter," Claire said. "At first, he drew you far away, then behind a car, then only as a suitcase, then not at all." Daniel looked down at his hands. They were the same hands that had signed checks, sent birthday cards, picked out toys online, forwarded school emails to his assistant to remind him later. Responsible hands, he had thought. Useful hands. But they had not tied shoelaces before school. They had not held a feverish child at 2 in the morning. They had not learned which stuffed animal Noah needed after bad dreams, or which song Emily hummed when she was trying not to cry. Claire folded the calendar closed. "I never asked them to stop loving you," she said. "I only stopped asking them to prove they still did." Daniel looked at her then, really looked, and saw the woman he had once called too sensitive, too cautious, too attached to routines. The woman who kept snacks in the car, remembered spirit days, bought backup mittens, and knew the exact aisle where Noah's favorite cereal was sold. He used to think those things were small. Now he understood they were the architecture of childhood. Upstairs, a soft thump sounded. Maybe Noah shifting in bed, maybe Emily sitting against her door. Claire's eyes lifted again, and the tenderness in her face was not for Daniel. That realization settled deeper than any accusation could have. He was not the center of her pain anymore. He was not the person she needed to convince. He was a guest in a house that still knew his footsteps, but no longer waited for them. Daniel reached for the letter, then stopped before touching it. For the first time that night, he asked instead of taking, "May I finish reading it?" Claire studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded once. Not as forgiveness, not as permission to return, only as an opening in a locked room, narrow and temporary. Daniel unfolded the paper again, and the next line waited for him in blue marker, small, uneven, and devastatingly clear. A dad comes back. A stranger visits. Daniel read the sentence 3 times before the room around him began to blur, not with tears, but with recognition arriving too late to be useful. A dad comes back. A stranger visits. The words were simple enough for a second grader to understand, and that was what made them unbearable. There was no clever cruelty in them, no adult language borrowed from Claire, no dramatic accusation meant to embarrass him, just a child's clean measurement of presence and absence. He folded the letter carefully, then unfolded it again because putting it down felt like refusing to listen. Claire remained near the sink, her arms resting at her sides, her posture calm but not soft. She had spent too many years absorbing the impact of his choices to help him process them now. The kitchen clock moved past 10:15. Outside, the rain slowed to a mist, leaving beads of water clinging to the window screen and silver lines on the driveway, where Daniel's black sedan waited with its headlights off. He thought of the life Claire had built inside this small house after he left. Not the dramatic life he imagined when he told friends she was doing fine, but the real one made of early alarms, school lunches, grocery lists, and quiet math at the kitchen table after a 10-hour day. After the divorce, Claire had taken the morning shift at a bakery on Maple Street, the kind with a bell above the door and cinnamon in the air before sunrise. She woke at 4:30, tied her hair back in the bathroom light, and moved through the house without waking the children. By 5:15, she was rolling dough under warm yellow bulbs while the rest of the town still slept. Her hands learned the rhythm of flour, sugar, butter, and survival. By 7, she was home again, smelling faintly of coffee and vanilla, packing lunches with apple slices and handwritten notes because Emily once said school felt less lonely when Mom's words were in her lunchbox. By 8, Claire had both children buckled into a used blue minivan with a heater that rattled below 30 degrees Fahrenheit. Then she drove them to school before beginning her second job from the small desk in the corner of the living room. She did bookkeeping for local businesses, answered emails between loads of laundry, and kept her phone face up in case the school called. Daniel had called that lifestyle managing. He had never understood that it was rebuilding. Claire rebuilt without applause. She sold her wedding jewelry except for one thin gold band she kept in a box, not because she missed being his wife, but because she wanted Emily to know that even broken chapters could be handled gently. She painted the hallway herself on a Saturday while Noah sat on an old sheet coloring dinosaurs. She fixed the loose cabinet hinge by watching a video 3 times. She learned which coupons mattered, which bills could wait 48 hours, which neighbors could be trusted with a spare key, and which nights the children needed pancakes for dinner more than they needed vegetables. The house did not become perfect. It became safe. That was the difference Daniel had missed. The lamp by the stairs stayed on because Noah still woke from storms. The pantry always had peanut butter because Emily worried when shelves looked empty. The back door lock clicked twice every night because Claire had promised the children that their home was theirs, steady and closed against anything that made them feel uncertain. Daniel looked at the shopping bags again. The dress and vest suddenly felt like costumes for a performance he had scheduled without asking whether the actors were willing. Tomorrow, at the rehearsal dinner, he wanted Emily and Noah smiling under chandeliers, standing beside Vanessa, proving to everyone that the divorce had matured into something elegant and painless. Claire had known better. She had always known. "Why did you agree to bring them tomorrow?" Daniel asked, his voice lower now. Claire glanced toward the stairs before answering. "Because they asked me if saying no would make you leave again." Daniel looked at her, and the last of his defensiveness thinned into silence. Claire stepped to the table and smoothed the corner of Emily's worksheet with 2 fingers. "I told them the truth. You are allowed to invite them. They are allowed to feel what they feel." There it was again, the quiet boundary he could not argue with. Not punishment, not revenge, just a door he no longer had the right to push open. Upstairs, a floorboard creaked, then settled. Daniel imagined Emily in her room, eyes open, waiting to see whether he would make this about himself. He imagined Noah holding the edge of his blanket, listening for the tone of a father who had become unpredictable only in his absence. Claire picked up the 2 shopping bags and set them gently by the front door. "They can decide in the morning," she said. Daniel nodded, though no one had asked for his agreement. For the first time, he understood that Claire's strength had never been loud. It had been the lamp left on, the lunches packed, the promises kept, the quiet refusal to let his emptiness become the shape of their childhood. And as he stood in the kitchen he once thought would always forgive him, Daniel finally saw the woman he had left behind had not been waiting to be rescued. She had been building a home sturdy enough for his children to stop waiting for him. By the time Daniel left that night, the rain had thinned into a quiet silver mist, and Claire stood at the front window until his sedan disappeared past the maple trees at the end of the block. She did not watch because she wanted him to turn back. She watched because the children were awake upstairs, and she needed to know whether another door would open, another promise would be made, another apology would arrive too heavy for small shoulders to carry. But the driveway stayed empty. The house settled around her with the familiar sounds of midnight, the soft tick of the wall clock, the refrigerator humming, the faint rush of water through old pipes. Claire turned off the kitchen lamp, then paused at the staircase when she saw Emily sitting on the top step in her pale blue pajamas, knees pulled to her chest. Noah sat beside her, wrapped in his dinosaur blanket, his hair flattened on one side from pretending to sleep. Neither child asked what Daniel had said. That was how Claire knew they had heard enough. She climbed the stairs slowly and sat one step below them, close but not crowding. "You do not have to decide tonight," she said. Emily looked down at her hands. Did he get mad? Claire thought of Daniel's face in the kitchen, of pride cracking into confusion, of the letter folded between his fingers. "He got quiet," she said. Noah leaned his cheek against Emily's shoulder. "Is quiet good?" Claire brushed a curl away from his forehead. Sometimes quiet means a person is finally listening. Noah seemed to think about that, but Emily did not soften. At 10 years old, she had already learned the difference between words and patterns. One apology could sound warm. 6 months of absence still felt cold. Claire kissed them both good night and waited in the hallway until their bedroom doors clicked shut again, not because she doubted them, but because children often needed the comfort of being heard even after they stopped speaking. Downstairs, the 2 shopping bags remained by the front door like guests no one had invited in. Claire did not open them. She did not hang the dress in Emily's closet or lay Noah's vest across a chair. They could choose in the morning. That was the promise she had made, and unlike Daniel, she had learned that promises did not need to be dramatic to matter. The next morning arrived pale and clear, washed clean by the storm. At 4:30, Claire's alarm vibrated beneath her pillow. She turned it off before it could ring, moved through the room in the dark, and tied her hair back with the same black elastic she kept on her wrist. The bakery on Maple Street glowed before sunrise, its windows fogged at the edges, the bell above the door giving a tired little chime when she stepped inside. For 3 hours, Claire worked in the warm scent of cinnamon rolls, blueberry muffins, and fresh coffee, her hands moving with the calm precision of someone who had survived by creating order. At 6:50, the first customer of the morning walked in wearing a charcoal coat, no tie, and the kind of quiet that did not demand attention. Nathan Reed ordered black coffee and 2 blueberry muffins, the same as every Friday. He had been coming for nearly a year, always polite, always patient, always leaving enough in the tip jar to make the teenage cashier blush. At first, Claire had thought he was just another commuter from the office buildings downtown. Then she noticed how he remembered things. Not loudly, not to impress her. He remembered that Emily liked muffins without powdered sugar because she hated white dust on her fingers. He remembered Noah called thunderstorms sky drums and needed something sweet after bad weather. He remembered Claire took her coffee with 1 splash of half and half when she was tired and black when she was trying not to be. "Rough night?" Nathan asked, not prying, just noticing the shadow beneath her eyes. Claire slid the muffins into a paper bag, the kind that keeps echoing after it ends. Nathan accepted that without asking for details. That was one of the first things Claire had trusted about him. He did not force doors open. He waited to be invited. Later that morning, when Claire returned home, Nathan happened to pass by the house on his way to a meeting at the community center, where his foundation was funding a reading program for elementary students. Noah's bike sat upside down in the driveway, one training wheel loose, and Noah stood beside it in his pajamas and rain boots, staring at it as if betrayal could come with handlebars. Nathan stopped at the sidewalk. "Need a hand, buddy?" Noah looked at Claire first. She nodded. Nathan crouched on the driveway, careful not to take over, and showed Noah how to hold the wrench steady. He did not call himself useful. He simply became useful. Emily watched from the porch with the guarded eyes of a child who had learned that adults often arrived with promises and left with excuses. When the wheel tightened, Noah gave it a small spin. It turned smoothly. "Do grown-ups always leave?" he asked. Nathan stayed crouched, so his eyes were level with Noah's. He took a second before answering, as if the question deserved more than comfort. "Some do," he said gently. "But the good ones come back when they say they will." Claire looked away then, toward the 2 shopping bags still waiting by the door, and felt the day ahead shift quietly beneath her feet. Claire did not answer Nathan's words right away. She only watched Noah test the bicycle wheel with one small push, his rain boots planted on the damp driveway, his face caught between wanting to believe and being afraid of what belief could cost. Emily still stood on the porch, arms folded over her pajama top, studying Nathan the way she studied math problems she did not trust at first. He did not try to win her over. He wiped his hands with a folded napkin from his coat pocket, placed the wrench back beside the bike, and stepped away before anyone had to ask him for space. That was his way. He never filled a silence just because he could. Claire appreciated that more than she knew how to say. The morning continued with ordinary motions that felt heavier than usual. Breakfast was toast with butter, scrambled eggs, and orange juice poured into mismatched glasses. The 2 shopping bags sat near the front door, bright, inexpensive, too polished for the worn welcome mat beneath them. Noah kept glancing at the navy vest through the tissue paper. Emily did not look at the white dress at all. Claire sat across from them at the kitchen table, still smelling faintly of cinnamon and coffee from the bakery, and waited. She had learned that children often spoke the truth only after adults stopped trying to pull it out of them. Finally, Noah touched the edge of the bag with one finger. "Do we have to go because he bought clothes?" Claire shook her head. "No." Emily looked up quickly, as if she had expected a longer answer, a lesson about manners, a reminder that their father would be disappointed. Claire gave none of those things. She folded her hands around her coffee mug and said, "A gift is not a contract." Noah frowned, thinking through the sentence. Emily understood it immediately. Something in her shoulders loosened, only a little, but Claire saw it. For years, Emily had been the child who remembered what everyone else forgot. She remembered Noah's library books, Daniel's birthdays, where Claire left her keys when she was tired. She remembered promises so carefully that broken ones seemed to hurt her twice. Once when they failed, and again when no one admitted they had failed. Claire reached across the table and brushed a crumb from Emily's sleeve. "Your father invited you to the rehearsal dinner tonight," she said. "You are allowed to go. You are allowed not to go. You are allowed to change your mind." Noah looked toward the stairs. "Will he be mad?" Claire breathed in slowly. Outside, Nathan's car was gone now, leaving only 2 faint tire marks near the curb and the repaired bike standing upright in the driveway. "He might feel things," she said, "but his feelings are not your job to carry." That sentence filled the room with a kind of quiet neither child knew how to name. Emily looked at her mother for a long time. "Did you carry them?" Claire's fingers tightened around the mug, not enough for the children to notice unless they were watching closely, and Emily was always watching closely. Claire chose the truth, but softened the edges. "I used to think that was what love meant." Noah kicked one socked foot beneath the table. "What does it mean now?" Claire looked at both of them, at the faces Daniel knew from photographs but not from mornings, and her voice became gentle but certain. "It means showing up without making someone beg." Later that afternoon, Vanessa called Daniel twice while Claire was helping Emily brush her hair in the upstairs bathroom. Claire saw the name flash on Daniel's old contact photo when his message appeared on her phone a moment later. He did not ask how the children were. He wrote, 7 o'clock at the Jefferson Hotel. Please make sure they look nice. Claire read the message once, then set the phone face down on the counter. Emily saw the motion in the mirror. "Is that him?" Claire nodded. Emily looked at her reflection, at the braid Claire was making with careful fingers. "I do not want the white dress." Claire tied the braid with a blue ribbon. "Then you do not have to wear it." Noah chose his own clothes too. khaki pants, sneakers, and a green sweater with one loose thread at the cuff. Emily wore a navy dress Claire had bought on clearance for her school concert, simple and soft, with pockets deep enough to hide nervous hands. Before they left, Emily slipped the folded letter into the pocket of her coat. Claire saw it, but said nothing. She understood by then that the letter had become more than paper. It was proof that their sadness had a shape. At 6:40, Nathan arrived at the door, not in a limousine, not with a grand gesture, but in a dark blue SUV with 2 booster seats already removed from the back, because he had asked Claire days earlier what would make the children more comfortable if they decided to attend. He wore a charcoal suit and carried himself with the same calm he had in the bakery, though the watch on his wrist cost more than Claire's first car. Daniel had invited Claire to arrive alone with the children. Claire had not agreed to arrive unprotected. Nathan did not step inside until Noah opened the door. "Are you coming too?" Noah asked. Nathan looked at Claire first, then back at him. "Only if you want me there." Noah considered this with serious eyes. Then he nodded once. Emily did not say anything, but when they walked to the car, she let Nathan open the door for her. Not because she needed help, but because he waited for permission before reaching for the handle. As Claire locked the house behind them, she glanced once at the lamp by the stairs, still glowing in the front window. It looked small from the driveway, but steady. The kind of light that did not chase anyone. The kind that simply stayed on for those who came home. The Jefferson Hotel stood downtown behind a row of polished brass doors and tall windows glowing the color of champagne. By the time Claire's hand touched the handle of Nathan's SUV, a valet in a black coat had already stepped forward, but Nathan shook his head gently and opened the door himself, first for Emily, then for Noah, then for Claire. He did it without performance, without looking around to see who noticed. Across the circular driveway, Daniel stood beneath the hotel awning in a dark tailored suit, one hand in his pocket, the other holding his phone as if business still had the right to stand between him and everything else. Vanessa stood beside him in a cream dress with pearl buttons, smiling at guests as they arrived, her hair smooth, her ring bright under the lights. She saw the children first. Her smile widened in the polished way of someone welcoming props into a picture. "There they are," she said, crossing the marble entryway before Daniel moved. "Our little stars." Emily's hand slid into her coat pocket, closing around the folded letter. Noah stepped half an inch closer to Claire. Daniel noticed. His eyes moved from Noah's sweater to Emily's navy dress, then to the shopping bags that were not there. "Where are the clothes I bought?" he asked before saying hello. Claire's face remained calm. They chose what they felt comfortable wearing. Vanessa's smile flickered, but only for a second. "Of course," she said lightly. "Children can be so particular." Nathan came around the car and stood beside Claire, quiet and unhurried. Daniel looked at him as if trying to place him, then failing, then deciding he did not matter. "I did not know you were bringing someone," Daniel said. Claire met his gaze. "You asked me to bring the children. You did not ask who they felt safe arriving with." The words were not loud, but they changed the temperature under the awning. Daniel's mouth tightened. Vanessa touched his sleeve, not with tenderness, but with warning. Guests were watching from the lobby. A photographer lifted his camera, then lowered it when no one smiled. Inside, the rehearsal dinner filled a private ballroom on the second floor, all white flowers, gold chairs, crystal glasses, and soft music drifting from hidden speakers. A long table displayed place cards written in looping calligraphy. Daniel had placed Emily and Noah beside him and Vanessa at the center table, with Claire at the far end near 2 distant cousins she had met once during the marriage. Claire saw it, understood it, and said nothing. Nathan saw it too. He simply pulled out Claire's chair at the end of the table, then sat beside her as if the far end had always been the most honorable place in the room. Emily and Noah did not move toward the center seats. They stood behind Claire's chair until Daniel noticed from across the room. "Kids," he called too brightly. "You are up here with me." Noah looked at the shiny place card with his name on it. Then he looked at Claire. Claire did not nod. She did not decide for him. Emily answered for both of them, her voice small but steady. "We want to sit with Mom." A few conversations softened at nearby tables. Daniel smiled in a way that showed only his teeth. "Just for dinner," he said. "Come on, do not make this awkward." The word awkward seemed to float above the table, fragile and ugly. Claire lowered her eyes to Noah, who whose fingers had curled into the sleeve of her dress. Nathan leaned slightly toward the boy, not touching him, only close enough to be heard. "You can choose your chair," he said. Noah looked at the empty seat beside Claire. Then he sat down. Emily sat on Claire's other side. Daniel's smile held for one more second, then disappeared. Vanessa laughed softly, trying to rescue the moment. "Blended families take practice," she told the guests nearby, as if the children were part of a lesson she had planned. "By the wedding, we will all look perfect." Emily's chin lowered. Claire felt it more than saw it. The photographer approached then, grateful for a task. "Family photo before dinner?" he asked. Vanessa brightened. "Wonderful idea." Daniel stood at once, recovering his public voice. "Emily, Noah, come here." The children rose slowly because manners had been taught to them even when comfort had not been given. They walked to the fireplace where Daniel and Vanessa posed beneath a garland of white roses. Claire stayed by the table. Nathan stood beside her, hands folded in front of him, silent. Daniel placed one hand on Noah's shoulder. The boy looked down at that hand, then stepped away. Not fast, not rudely, just enough to leave air where Daniel expected obedience. The room noticed. Emily did too. When Daniel reached for her hand, she slipped both hands into the pockets of her navy dress. The photographer hesitated behind the camera. Vanessa's smile hardened at the edges. Daniel leaned closer to the children and whispered through his teeth, "Can you please act normal for one picture?" Emily looked up at him then, her eyes clear, guarded, older than 10 for exactly 1 second. "This is normal," she said. No one laughed. No music seemed to play. Across the room, Claire did not move. She only watched her daughter stand in a truth that had taken years to become visible. Daniel looked toward Claire, searching for someone to blame, but she gave him nothing to argue with. She did not rescue him from the silence. She did not rescue the room from discomfort. For once, everyone had to stand exactly where they had chosen to be. Daniel stood beside the fireplace with one hand suspended in the empty space where Noah's shoulder had been, and for a moment, every polished surface in the ballroom seemed to reflect what he did not want to see. The crystal glasses, the gold-rimmed plates, the white roses, the photographer's black lens, even Vanessa's smile, all of it held the same quiet truth. The picture had failed before it was taken. He lowered his hand slowly, trying to recover his composure, but embarrassment moved faster. It climbed his neck, tightened his mouth, and made his voice come out sharper than he intended. "Claire," he said across the room, "a little help?" Claire did not rise. She sat with her hands folded near Noah's water glass, her face calm, her posture straight, every inch of her refusing to perform the old role of smoothing over what Daniel had broken. "They are standing," she said. "They are being polite." Daniel gave a short laugh that did not sound like laughter. "Polite? They are humiliating me in front of my guests." Emily's fingers closed around the folded letter in her pocket. Noah looked at the carpet. Vanessa stepped closer to Daniel. Her voice dipped in sugar for the room. "Maybe everyone is just tired. Weddings can bring up complicated feelings." Nathan remained near Claire's chair, quiet enough that some guests still had not recognized him, steady enough that the children knew exactly where he was. Daniel looked from him to Claire, and the old accusation returned to his eyes, familiar and easy. "Is this because of him?" he asked. "Is that what this is? You bring some man here, and suddenly my children act like I am nobody." The ballroom softened into silence. A waiter paused near the sideboard with a tray of dinner rolls. The pianist's hands hovered above the keys, then lowered gently into his lap. Claire looked at Daniel for a long second, and there was no anger in her expression, only a kind of exhaustion that had outlived anger. "Daniel," she said, "they are not acting." Emily stepped forward before Claire could say more. Her face was pale under the chandelier light, but her voice did not shake when she spoke. "Mom did not make us feel this way." Daniel turned toward her, startled, as if the child he had expected to pose had suddenly become a person. Emily pulled the folded letter from her pocket and held it with both hands. Noah moved closer to her, not hiding this time, just standing beside his sister as if courage could be shared through proximity. "I wrote it," Emily said. Noah helped. Daniel stared at the paper. "Emily, this is not the time." She looked at him, and the softness of her face made the words even harder. There was never a time. The sentence reached the far tables. Someone set down a fork with a tiny sound. Vanessa's smile vanished completely now, replaced by the careful stillness of someone realizing the room was no longer hers to manage. Emily held the letter out. Daniel did not take it right away. Perhaps he thought refusing it would make the moment disappear. Perhaps he hoped Claire would intervene, tell Emily to stop, tuck the truth away one more time to protect everyone's comfort except her children's. But Claire did not move. She only looked at Emily with a mother's silent permission, the kind that said, "You do not have to carry this alone, and you do not have to hide it anymore." Daniel finally took the letter. The paper looked smaller in his hand than it had in the kitchen, but the room made it heavier. He unfolded it under the chandelier. His eyes moved over the first lines he had already read, then down to the part he had not reached. "You know our birthdays, but you do not know what time we wake up. You know our school names, but you do not know which door we use at pickup. You know we like pizza, but you do not know Noah takes the cheese off when he is nervous. You know Emily sings, but you do not know she stopped looking for you in the audience." Daniel's face changed in pieces. First resistance, then confusion, then the slow, private collapse of a man running out of excuses in public. He looked at Noah, but Noah's eyes were fixed on the carpet. He looked at Emily, but she was watching the letter, not him. At the bottom of the page, written in smaller handwriting, Noah's words leaned unevenly between the lines. "Mom says you love us. I think you love the idea of us." Daniel swallowed. The room did not breathe. Then Emily pointed to the date at the top corner. "We wrote it in March," she said. "Mom never sent it." Daniel looked at the date. 6 months earlier. 6 months of Claire keeping this pain private. 6 months of her not using it in court, not showing his parents, not sending it to Vanessa, not turning it into revenge. The humiliation he felt now had not been arranged by Claire. It had been waiting inside his own choices. "I found it," Daniel said quietly, more to himself than anyone else. Claire's voice answered from across the room. "Yes." One word. No accusation. No rescue. Daniel looked at Nathan then, maybe because he still needed somewhere to place the blame. Before he could speak, the hotel manager entered from the side doors and crossed the ballroom with practiced respect. He stopped beside Nathan and extended a hand. "Mr. Reed, thank you again for your foundation's support of the children's wing. The hospital board is honored to host you tomorrow." A murmur passed through the guests, small but unmistakable. Vanessa turned sharply toward Nathan. Daniel's eyes narrowed as recognition finally arrived. Nathan Reed was not just the quiet man who had opened car doors and fixed a bicycle wheel. He was the donor Vanessa had been trying to impress for months. The name printed on the sponsorship proposal Daniel had skimmed but never bothered to remember. Nathan shook the manager's hand, then released it without flourish. He did not look victorious. He looked almost sorry the truth had arrived in such a room. Daniel stood with the letter in his hand, surrounded by flowers bought for a celebration and silence earned by absence. Emily reached for Noah's hand. Claire rose at last, not to explain, not to apologize, but to gather her children before their pain became entertainment. As she crossed the ballroom, every guest made space for her, not because she demanded it, but because dignity has a way of clearing a path without making a sound. Claire reached Emily and Noah without hurrying. She did not look around to measure the damage, did not search the guests' faces for sympathy, did not wait for Daniel to find the right words, because some words only arrive after the people who needed them have stopped waiting. She placed one hand lightly on Emily's shoulder and the other on Noah's back, and both children leaned toward her with the quiet instinct of coming home. Daniel still held the letter. The paper trembled slightly in his fingers, not enough for the room to see, but enough for him to feel. Vanessa stood beside the fireplace, her face pale beneath the chandelier light, her perfect rehearsal dinner slipping out of her control in a silence no planner could repair. The hotel manager had stepped away. The photographer had lowered his camera completely. At the center of a room designed for celebration, Daniel looked suddenly alone, not abandoned, not attacked, just alone in the shape his own choices had made. Claire turned to leave, and that small movement frightened him more than the letter had. "Claire," he said. Her name came out softer this time, stripped of command. She paused, but she did not turn fully. Daniel looked at Emily, then Noah, then the page in his hand. "I did not know it was this bad." For a moment, the old Claire might have rushed to soften it. She might have said it was not too late, might have filled the silence with hope so he would not have to stand inside it. But that woman had spent too many nights explaining absence to children who who deserved presents. This Claire only. Nodded once, not cruelly, not coldly, simply with the honesty of someone no longer willing to carry his awakening for him. Now you do, she said. Noah's hand found hers. Emily kept her chin high, but her eyes were bright. Daniel took one step forward, then stopped when both children drew closer to their mother. It was such a small motion, barely more than breathing, yet it told him everything the letter had not needed to say. Trust did not disappear in a single night. It left quietly after being asked to wait too many times. Nathan moved toward the doorway first and held it open, not as a rescuer, not as a man claiming victory, but as someone who understood that the most respectful thing he could offer was space. Claire guided the children through the open door. As they passed him, Nathan looked down at Noah and gave a small nod. Noah nodded back. Emily did not smile, but she did not look afraid either. In the hallway, the noise of the ballroom faded behind them, replaced by the soft hum of hotel lights and the distant sound of traffic moving along the avenue below. Claire did not speak until they reached the elevator. Emily slipped her hand into her coat pocket, then realized the letter was gone. Her face changed, just for a second. Claire saw it. It is all right, she said gently. He needed to read it. Emily looked at the closed ballroom doors. Will it make him different? Claire pressed the elevator button. The small circle lit up gold. That is his choice. Noah leaned against her side. Do we have to wait and see? Claire bent and kissed the top of his hair. No, sweetheart. We keep living. If he wants to become someone safe, he can do the work while we keep living. The elevator opened. They stepped inside. All four of them reflected in the mirrored walls. Claire in her simple dress, Emily with her navy pockets and brave eyes, Noah in his green sweater with the loose thread, Nathan standing slightly apart so the family could remain whole without being crowded. Downstairs, the valet hurried to bring the SUV around. The night air was cool, around 50 degrees, carrying the clean scent that follows rain on city pavement. Claire buttoned Noah's coat, then tucked Emily's braid back over her shoulder. These were the gestures Daniel had never counted because they did not look grand enough to matter. Now, from the hotel entrance above, he watched them through the glass doors and understood too late that childhood was made almost entirely of gestures like that. Vanessa stood behind him, but said nothing. Maybe she had finally seen that a family photo could not be built from people who did not feel like family. Daniel looked down at the letter again, at the date from March, at the blue marker, at the final line written by two children who had tried to be kind even while telling the truth. A dad comes back. A stranger visits. Outside, Nathan opened the car door. Claire helped Noah climb in, then waited as Emily fastened her seatbelt. Before getting in, Emily looked up at the hotel entrance. For a second, Daniel thought she might wave. She did not. She only looked at him with the quiet distance of a child who had learned not to chase headlights. Then she got into the car. Claire followed, and Nathan closed the door with a careful hand. The SUV pulled away from the curb, passing beneath the hotel lights, then into the dark, ordinary street where life continued without applause. Daniel stood behind the glass until the taillights disappeared. He had thought losing Claire had been the punishment, but the real punishment was hearing his children speak to him like a guest. And Claire, watching the city lights slide across the window beside her children, did not feel victorious. She felt free. She had not taught them to hate him. She had simply stopped teaching them to wait.